Hey FlossTube, it's Leigh from Creative Leigh here with a bonus Needles on Fire stitch with me. I promised this a week or so ago. I'm going to be stitching on my Caroline Manning Sunset and had a request to do this so people could see me changing colours, because the last time I did my Needles on Fire I just did one colour and stitched a raven on Nevermore. So I have all my floss messily on little cardboard bobbins. I just, for this project, I punched a couple of holes, so I had most of them have two colours on them, sort of in colour order. I'm using Pattern Keeper, so just having that here on a little, what do you call it, tablet cushion thing. So yeah, I will grab a colour. I get my needles threaded up. So I thought while I do this floss, what do you call it, Needles on Fire, this stitch with me, I might do a bit of a get to know your floss tuber tag. I don't know that I ever did one when I started my channel, and we're coming up close to well, I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers, which is amazing. And also that's a beading needle, we won't use that beading needle. Also next week's videos, FlossTube is going to be number 140, so I figured while I sit here doing my FlossTube, no, stitch with me, I'll chat about, yeah, do the floss tuber tag, I guess. So let me find out where I am. Okay, so just zooming in a bit on my, I'll just get this started. So I usually just stitch over the tail. Eventually it gets caught into my floss, so I mean, I don't know if you can even see. I stitched in such a small, like, because I hold everything just around my thumb, you know, this is the area, everything else is just loosey-goosey and stuff, so I don't know. Anyway, I'll just stitch. I'm just going to stitch. So I'm using colour 22, which is one of my favourite reds in the DMC range. So quite happy about that. Now because this little wedge is essentially, it's a little wedge of stitches. So 4, then 3, 2 and 1. And I'm going to come back here. I often will just stitch the rest of this side so I don't have to carry my floss too far. So even though I started here to stitch 4 stitches, then miss 1, then 4, I'll finish this wedge before coming back and finishing this wedge. I just try and stitch smart and frugally, mostly because if you don't need to carry your thread a mile, why carry it a mile? So I'll stitch this little section and then I'll start answering questions. I'm stitching this on Monday in my lunch break, so working from home today, and I thought I'll just quickly get this filmed while it's daylight, still a runny day, and I just run it under a couple of stitches just again so I'm not carrying too far across the back, just keeps it a little tidier. But it's these Caroline Manning designs is just sort of, I don't know, I find them quite relaxing to stitch. So you are changing colours quite a lot, but the geometrics are fun to stitch. They're sort of relaxing and the colours are just beautiful. Like if, you know, time wasn't so precious, it was unlimited and I didn't have to choose, I would totally stitch so many of these this range of her designs because I love them so much. I think they look beautiful, a whole kind of gridded wall of them. I do finish them off, even though I'm going to use this colour and move over a couple of squares. I don't generally drag my thread too far. So the back of it looks... I've lost my needle. The back of it looks pretty tidy. But yeah, I don't consciously try too hard. But I just have a habit of stitching a certain way, so it ends up being pretty tidy. Cool. So, right, first question. How did you start, or who introduced you to cross stitch? So of course, some of you who've been around for a long time, I would have answered some of these questions in the past. Sometimes I pull my thread completely through and forget to hold it in the back. So yeah, but I mean, again, a lot of you haven't watched my videos from the very beginning. And while I didn't do a formal tag, I did kind of answer some of these questions previously. But anyway, so how did I start, or who introduced me? I guess from a handcraft perspective, my mum and her most of her sisters, I think all of her sisters, she had 4 sisters, they all did stuff with their hands. I guess it's that generation. They were taught to knit and sew and crochet and be sort of self-sufficient, I guess, when it comes to a needle and thread. And so we grew up always doing things with our hands. But my mother didn't do cross-stitch or embroidery per se, but one of her sisters did. So I think that other than at primary school, where we would have been taught to probably stitch the odd X on a big piece of hessian, or I don't know, just to practice making X's, which I don't really count. Probably it was my Aunt Anne, and I remember her getting my sister and I stayed with her in Inglewood in Taranaki for some school holidays. We used to get on a bus because my mum worked, so we'd get on a bus and we'd go down to Taranaki and stay with Anne and our cousins and stuff, and help out on the farm and just do whatever you do just for a break, give mum a break. And she bought pieces of gingham fabric and taught us how to do crosses, I think, and make a design using the white squares on the gingham fabric. So we made tablecloths. I remember mine was black and white. I was into black and white when I was younger, and my sister's, I think, was red and white gingham. The tablecloth is long gone, given to an op shop at some stage. So that would have been, I would have been like 8 or 9 maybe. My sister 6 or 7, maybe 8 and 10. So that's probably where I started doing like how to do embroidery. Then when I was probably 15 or 16, I picked up a tapestry, or what we call needlepoint. We used to call them tapestries, and it was a sort of a Pierrot, the crying French clown. And I did that, which again, that's long gone to an op shop. It was the sort of thing that by the time I finished it, I'm like, well, I don't want this anymore. It wasn't really, it was the style I liked as a 15, 16-year-old, but by the time I finished it, and I don't even remember when I finished it, you know, it wasn't something I'd ever put on my wall or anything. So that was the first full coverage type project that I ever did. And then when I was at university, I think my sister might have got into cross stitch, or it was very much going through a bit of a phase, popularity in the 90s, and yeah, go through a bit of a growth, and there were lots of designs, and you know, local sewing shops had charts and things. So I picked up a couple of charts and started doing cross stitch as a way of relaxing, like a bit of a reward. When I finished an assignment or an essay, I would then allow myself an evening of cross stitch. So that's sort of when I started cross stitching for real. Taught myself, just picked it up really. Back in the day, books used to have quite explicit instructions on how to. These days, when you buy charts, they often don't tell you how to get started and how to just presume you already know. But you used to buy any chart or any book you used to buy in the 90s pretty much had how to cross stitch. Now, did I follow those instructions? No. I stitched differently than how they said, but, you know, they gave you kind of the bare minimum to start. And you just sort of gave it a go, really. I usually kind of, not colour complete, but as I pick a colour, I then move around and do all that I do. But someone had asked, they wanted to see how I change colours. So I'll finish this symbol, which is in here, and then I'll change to another symbol just so you can see me changing colours. Get started. Does help to concentrate a little bit, because I'd be really annoyed if I stitched it in the wrong place, because it is on one single strand on 20 count aider, and it can be a little tricky to undo. Okay, so next question, do I have a favourite theme or designer? I have favourite designers. I definitely, and they've changed over time, but I love Teresa Wentzler, having stitched, three of her big projects, and working on, having started my fourth one this year, which is the Fall, one of the carousel horses. And I, love Mirabilia Noricor, but that doesn't mean I love all of her designs or want to stitch all of them. She's certainly very prolific, and there are a lot, but I have stitched 9 Mirabilias. I still have 8 of them. I've sold one of them to my aunt, that same aunt, and I've stitched now several Noricor bits. But probably of the more modern designers, my favourite designer is Jules Line from Long Dog. I love Long Dog samplers, and I would, there's like easily 15 designs I want to stitch, and majority of them are her monochromatics. I love them. They're just amazing and so much fun. So I've stitched... how many? I've stitched 4 of her monochromatic designs, and I've stitched 1 of her more colourful, I think she calls them traditional samplers, or I can't remember which category they're in. But there's many other designers that I love. I love Caroline Manning designs, and these are completely different to Long Dog samplers. I don't know, but yeah, probably my favourite would be Long Dog samplers. Themes. Generally I love samplers. I love monochromatic. It's probably easy to say what I don't love. I don't stitch, I won't say never, but I don't stitch a lot of Christmas or Halloween. Not really into. I'm never going to stitch Easter. So I'm not really themey, not into themes per se, but definitely into styles. Like, love samplers, love monochromatic. I like, prim, but not exclusively. Like, I don't love everything prim. I don't love patriotic. I don't love Christmas. I don't love Halloween. I don't love Easter. It's more like styles. I like styles rather than themes. Cool. So now I've picked up another colour, 26. And where does that go? Down here. So what floss brand do you use? Actually, it's quite funny. If I had done this tag, 3 years ago, I probably would have had very different answers for some of these questions. So, DMC is the brand that I have the full set for. I have used DMC since the very beginning. I did when I first started stitching, like I said, back in the 90s. I used to use Anchor equally. I would buy the store that I used to buy floss from when I was kitting up a project. I would use Anchor or DMC. I wasn't worried. They had both, and sometimes they didn't have the recommended DMC colour, so I'd buy the recommended Anchor colour. I used to mix them, but it is harder to get Anchor, and DMC sort of became the main brand you could get. And certainly when you look at across the cross-stitching community, the majority of the charts are charted in DMC. Whereas they did used to often be, your chart would have DMC, Anchor, and Semco. That, again, we're talking about back in the 80s and 90s. So DMC is probably my go-to. And again, I would happily stitch with Anchor if I had a full set of Anchor and it was easy to stitch with. But I also I'll stitch with anything at least once. I love silk, and all different kinds of silk. So, and I love over-dyed threads, and I like, the three main sort of, I guess, commercial over-dyeds would be, that, like, all your prims are charted in. So you've got, Colour and Cotton, Weeks Dye Works, Gentle Arts. I love Thread Gatherer. I love Victorian Motto Sampler Shop Thread, but that became difficult to deal with them a couple of years ago. I used to be a club member, and then it just got hard and messy and weird. But their threads are beautiful to stitch with. They're still some of my favourites, and their fabrics were beautiful as well. So it's just a shame that they became really difficult to deal with. Those of you in the know, you know. I've stitched with Sulky, not my favourite. I don't get that excited about it, but it is nice in the right circumstances. 103 threads, silks, Soie d'Alger. I don't think I've stitched with Soie Perlée. I love all the silks. I just love colour and texture, and I'll stitch with all sorts, and I like mixing threads. I'm happy to mix silk and cotton. I'm happy to use different kinds of silk. I just love stitching, colour, texture. So all of the threads. My fabric of choice. So my fabric of choice would definitely be linen. I love linen. Linen's probably what I stitch, 80%. She says she's stitching on 20 count Ada, but for full coverage, Ada is fantastic. So I've got a bit of a knot. So I love probably 36 and 40 count are my favourite, followed by 32 and then 28 count linen. I do stitch a little bit on even weave, so Lugano, Brittany, etc. There's sort of projects that I like to stitch on even weave. Anything that's highly symmetrical, where like a mandala type design, I'm always going to want to stitch that on an even weave because I want to avoid slubs, and slubs, and where the threads, you might have a particularly thick thread in one row, and when it's an even weave, you just don't get that generally. So some projects I like an even weave, some projects I like an Ada. So for example, this project, I've got a couple of full coverage projects on Ada, but the feel of silk thread through linen is just luscious to me. So yeah, I'm a linen girl. Next question is, do I use a needle threader or am I a licker? And the answer is neither. I use the fold and poke method. So if you've been watching, I fold the thread over the needle and pull the eye through while giving a gentle pressure, which then you can poke that folded thread through the eye, and usually it goes through first time. It's easy, works with different types of threads, different thicknesses of threads. It's quick, can do it without looking once you're used to doing it. It's the way my aunt taught me how to thread a needle back when I was wee, and I've always threaded my needles that way. I do have a needle threader. The exception would be if I'm trying to get I don't know, slightly thick threads like some metallics through the eye of a small needle. I might use a needle threader. The reality is I usually just persevere and get it through because I don't have a needle threader next to me. So I'm just marking off on Pattern Keeper as we go so I don't get too far ahead of myself. So that is what I do with that. Where does this go? Up here. How many projects have I finished? Geez, I have no idea. I mean, when you count like tiny little things that you might do for a little, been back in the day, I would have done some little motifs for cards. I've stitched on some hand towels for a friend. I've stitched birth samplers for my niece and nephews. I've stitched wedding samplers. I've stitched pieces for friends when they've asked me to, sort of on commission, although I didn't really get paid. I've stitched gifts for people. Afghan for my first nephew was born. I stitched on an Afghan, made a teddy bear counting book. I've stitched on scraps of fabric just for something to do, like during the pandemic. I stitched a whole raft of those Be Well and Stitch or Stay Home and Stitch designs. I've probably in the room there, gosh, I just went through them all with Anne. How many would I have? I don't know, 60 no, probably more than that. Probably like 80 projects. My thread's got a bit fluffy. I'm going to have to finish it, cut off the end. Probably 80. I mean, all up, I probably stitched, I don't know. I mean, I've sold stuff as well. 150 projects maybe? I've got no idea. A lot of them are quite large. Yeah, I don't know. Heaps. I've finished heaps of projects. Let me grab another floss. How many completed works do you currently have displayed in your home? Okay, let me think. As I gaze around my house. In my study, I've got one. In this lounge, I've currently got 1, 2, 3, 4. Got 5 in the lounge. That's 6. I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the hallway. That's 10. I've got 3 in my bedroom. That's 13. And I've got 1 or 2 in the spare bedroom. That's 15. So I think I've got 15 finished objects displayed in my home right now. And I've got a couple of big walls that I want to eventually have sampler displays on, but I don't have everything framed yet. So also I haven't stitched everything yet. So there's 3 walls. There's one that is sort of on the wall, the back of my craft room, which is beside the kitchen. So it's sort of where I would walk through from my garage into my kitchen dining area. So that wall I expect to be a big sampler display wall at some stage and have, 7, 8, 9 samplers on there. I've got a wall behind me on my couch, on the orange couch Serenity, where I want to have a cluster of, say, 4 or 5 red samplers. I've got a spare room. I've got a big wall opposite the bed in the spare room that, again, I want to have a big sampler collection in there. Well, when I say sampler, I mean cross-stitch collection in there. And yeah, it's a big wall, so it needs a lot on there. Like one sampler would look weird on there on its own. It would be lost in the space. And in my bedroom, I've still got room to do Life After Death, which I want to put in there as complementary to Death by Cross Stitch, which is in my bedroom. And then I've got 2 Teresa Wenslers that I want to get framed to put above my bed. I've got a navy velvet headboard, and I've got the English Garden sampler and the English Cottage sampler that I want to get framed as complementary projects and put there. So I sort of have plans for stuff, but yeah, as I say, 15, 16 pieces on display at the moment. That includes a couple of smalls and a cushion. Oh, I have one I need to hang up my laundry series in the laundry, but I haven't done that. It's still in the wardrobe. I framed that like a year ago. I'm hopeless at finishing and hanging. Where am I? Oh, over here. Do one more wedge of this colour. Okay, next one. How many? No, I've already answered that one. Do you do more stitching for gifts or keep them for yourself? Okay. I keep most of my stitching for myself. So as I said before, I have stitched things for family and friends, and I have sold some stitching where I've in the past stitched things that I enjoyed the process, got the finish, and then by the time I finished I'm like, can't see this ever being on a wall, so I sold them. When I sell things, I tend to just try and recover the materials cost. Those of you who know, it's not a cheap hobby necessarily, especially if it's got beading and hand-dyed fabric, or maybe specialty threads like silks and sparkly stuff. So I will usually sort of approximate what the material costs will be and then just add 10 or 15, 20 bucks on, just to help me feel a bit better about myself, about selling it. And yeah, that's what I sell. So yeah, majority of my projects are for me. That being said, so this year is, I'm very focused on my 50 at 50, getting 50 projects started at the age of 50. and they're mostly for me. I mean, I have just finished one that is for someone else as a gift. They don't know, so I can't say who. That's the May I by All Through the Night. But next year, so 2023, I plan to do a whole series of smalls that I'll finish, so they won't be framed, but cushions and flat folds and stuff, whatever. A whole lot of smaller projects that I intend to stitch for a number of friends. So I will be putting a little bit more focus into other people next year, because those projects just don't fit into what I've got at the moment, because I've got so much kitted up. So that is a plan for next year. Yeah, looking forward to that, as well as a couple of big projects, but definitely not 51 at 51 like some people have suggested. I'm just putting this thread back on because I've finished with this colour for now. What would I go to next? So when I pull the strand off, I always feel the floss to see which way the kind of the nap lies, so then you get a smoother stitch. You just have to feel it and work that out if you care. So normally, as I said, I would move around with that same colour, but I'm just sort of staying in the same area just to show you Mr. Jean. It all counts. Each X is closer to the finished product, right? And I had said I wanted to finish this I think in August, which I just pulled that through again. I doubt I'm going to finish this in August, because as soon as I said that, I then didn't pick it up. We'll see. Got a lot on the next few weekends. I've got quite a lot on the next few weekends leading up to when I go to Australia. If I haven't finished it by then, I might take this to Australia. I think if I take my tablet, it's an easy enough project to stitch on. I just dropped all my thread. Stitch on when I'm away. Okay, next question. What is your favourite project or finish you're most proud of? I don't so much get proud of projects per se. Pride is something that comes from meeting a challenge, persevering when something was difficult. And for me, cross-stitching's never really been difficult. So while I get real enjoyment from a project and pleasure from the whole thing, really. I enjoy the kitting up. I enjoy pulling all the the threads together, whether they're called for or my own. It's not really prideful for me, but going back, when I finished the Teresa Wentzler Peacock Tapestry back in, I think I finished that in 1992, and I did finally get that framed in 2020. That for those of you who have stitched that piece, it is challenging. The the border is, while repetitive, it's a huge repeat of quite a complicated floral design. So you can't memorize it. It's not something you can kind of go, okay, well, I've done a few of those repeats. I can whip my way around the border. So you have to follow the chart. And of course, it's a Teresa Wenzel, so it's full of blends and, you know, one stitch of this here and then one stitch of it there. So you're chopping and changing a lot. You know, it's filled with quarter stitches and, you know, every single pear and every single leaf on that tree is backstitched. You know, there's real intricacy in it. And it's a dense piece, so there is a bit of open space in the background, you know, behind the half-stitched trees. But it was a challenge to keep going with it when I stitched it. I, you know, did a quarter of it and then I'd put it away for a couple of months and then I'd pick it up and stitch another quarter of it. So I think I stitched it within a year, but I kind of stitched it on it for a month and then put it away, stitched on it for another month, put it away. So sort of did it in seasons. And when I finished that, that was a real sense of accomplishment. So I guess that's pride. And it is where I say it's just cross-stitching, it's just X's, just any project's kind of doable if you find a fabric you like and floss you like. That one, I would agree, the Teresa Wenzel Peacock Tapestry is not a project for everybody. It is a challenge. It definitely is a more expert stitch because you do have to contend with all of the things that cause people grief. Quarter stitches, backstitch, blends, metallics, beads, and then with the English garden sampler, cut work. So yeah, I think when I stitched that, I felt a real sense of accomplishment and pride because that was a challenging stitch. And what else? That's sort of it really. I don't really feel pride per se because it's a hobby and an activity that comes really naturally to me and isn't a challenge. So I know I stitch to relax, I stitch for pleasure, I stitch I like having beautiful colours come alive before my eyes, and yeah, I don't stitch for a challenge, I guess. So yeah. Next one. What do you love? What do you love and what do you hate about cross stitch? I think I just talked about what I love about it. What I hated when you get a knot like that, but no. I enjoy the tactile nature of the hobby, you know, silk and linen and threads and beads and even stitching a monochromatic piece, just the pattern, colour, texture, it's relaxing. It's amazing what a few crosses in fabric can turn into a beautiful image that tells a story or evokes a feeling, and I love having a bit of liberty with it to tweak things when I feel like tweaking them. What do I hate about cross stitch? That 40 count midnight that I tried to stitch on the other week. But no, I don't really hate anything. Hate's a really strong word. I don't really hate anything, and I don't really know that I dislike anything. I don't really like stitching on what do you call it? Sparkly fabric. What's that stuff called when it's got the shiny lurex stuff in it? What's that called? Oh my gosh, I can't even think. You know what I mean, the sparkly fabric. I don't like that because the thread goes when you pull it through. I don't like that texture. But I mean, I don't hate it. I have stitched on it and it's fine. I just don't love it. So, yeah, no, nothing that I really hate. It's just, if you don't like something, you just avoid it, right? I need to pick up my thread now because I dropped it. I'll be right back. Okay, back. I have about 5 needle minders within reach, and I still put my needle in my mouth because I like to live life on the edge. What has been your least favourite or worst experience while stitching? Crikey. I didn't even read these before. I don't know. I don't even know if I've had a worst experience. What would I've done? I've never cut my fabric. I've never cut I don't think. I'm really thinking about this. I don't know. I don't really know that I've had a bad experience. I mean, because I stitched like this, I have on occasion shoved the needle right up under my thumbnail and gone deep into my thumb. That's probably it. It's the risk you take when you sew like this, is sometimes you slip. And, oh, by crikey, did that make you know you're alive when you shove a needle under your thumb, between your thumbnail and the pad of your thumb. Yeah, I don't know that I've had a bad experience at all. Nope, I got nothing. That's good, isn't it? Life could be worse. Oh gosh, there's really lots of negative. What do you love and what do you hate about cross stitch? Haven't we just talked about that? Did I think I already talked about that, didn't I? Did I read them out of order? Yeah, I read them out of order. Ignore me. Have you introduced anyone else to cross stitch? I don't know that I've done that. I've had a couple of friends who have got back into it, having kind of seen what I've done. As in they're like, oh, I used to cross stitch, and then they've gone and dug all their stuff out, and then they've started, picked it up again. But of course, 10, 15 years later, where there's lots of shiny new things available, and Etsy and PDFs, which is a great opportunity if you don't want to pay for postage and just want a quirky little design. I think I've put people off cross stitch, to be fair. I have a friend and she knows who she is. Years ago, so this is before this latest, this is back earlier in the 2000s, where I met a friend through scrapbooking. I have a horrible feeling that's the wrong colour. Did I pick up the right colour? I didn't. That's the wrong colour. I'm going to frog that. What a muppet. It's orange, but it's not the right orange. Oh, I'm just going to throw that out. Okay, I'm going to undo. Frogging, live frogging. So, yeah, I had a friend who... I met her through scrapbooking, and I was giving her a ride home one day, and she'd said, she had been to, and if she watches this, she knows who she is. And she said she had, been to a sort of a stitching gathering at a local pub or something. I don't know what they were doing, but and she said, people just take along their little bit of stitching and have a chat and a cup of tea kind of thing or whatever. And I was like, I used to do stitching, or I do stitching, or used to do stitching. At the time, I wasn't actively stitching. I said, oh, that might be quite fun. And then she sort of, I don't know, over the next little while showed me what she'd been working on, and she would buy some of those magazines where you get the little freebies and stitch on little things. And I was like, oh, that reminds me, I've got, I think at that stage I had started work on one of my Mirabilia mermaids, but I hadn't finished her. I put her away, got distracted and stuff, and it's very unlike me to leave a project half done. And I said, oh, I remember, I really need to finish this mermaid. Anyway, so I invited her around to my house to have a look at my cross-stitching, which meant opening my trunk where I used to have all of my finished projects rolled up in acid-free tissue paper. So, of course, we talked about, oh, yeah, I do some stitching, and she came around, and, of course, I pulled everything out to show her, and I think she was a bit overwhelmed with the fact that I had this trunk filled with, finished Mirabilias, heavily beaded and embellished projects, and Teresa Wentzler designs, and half a dozen or a dozen other samplers and stuff. So, and then she didn't talk about stitching again, so I think I might have put her off. But it certainly wasn't meant to do that. I didn't mean to show off. It was nice to have someone to share it with. So, right, this is definitely the right colour now, 900, not the one next to it, which was 946. A slightly lighter shade of orange. We love stitching things twice, don't we? Okay, what's the time? All right, cool, doing good time. This should only take about an hour. What do you know? What was your first project and how did you finish it? If not, what was your first finish? Okay, we'll just get started. So when we're talking about cross-stitch proper, not the tapestry or needlepoint, the first time I picked a counted cross-stitch project and some fabric was the one that I remember was this first one that I did when I was at university. So it's probably like 1991, I'd say, my second year maybe. And I bought this booklet of designs that were all cat themed, and it would have been like a leisure arts book or one of those brands. I don't know if it was leisure arts. I've had a poke around, I can't see it anywhere. And there were several little really cute sort of whimsical watercolory looking cat designs, and I decided to stitch one. I think it was one kitten, a pretty fluffy sort of tortoiseshell kitten in a window surrounded by yellow and purple flowers with a butterfly, and the kitten was looking at the butterfly, and it was very much, as I said, whimsical, watercolory sort of, it wasn't realistic looking, but it wasn't too cartoony. And I bought a piece of Aida, don't remember what count it was, it would have been white Aida, got the floss, and I remember it was a mix of DMC and Anchor. And what I did is I got a pencil. This is how I started my first project. I got a pencil and I picked a colour and I went through on the Aida and I marked all the squares where that colour was going to be, because my previous attempt had been that needlepoint where of course it had the colour printed on the thing and you just coloured it in. So I started doing that, and then partway through I realised that I'd completely messed up with the pencil and essentially miscounted. So then I pulled all that out, but by now I'd marked my fabric with pencil. I turned it over and decided to just start again, but not do the pencil, like actually do proper counted cross stitch. And it went fine. So I finished that piece. I don't know how long it took me. I definitely was slower than I am now. I finished that piece and then it sat in my stash for a long time, finished. And then one day I was like, in the, 10 years later or so, I was like, I'm never going to frame this. So I sold that. The second piece that I started was, I know that I finished it in 1992 because I dated it, was the Jesters, which I shared way back in one of my early floss tubes. So like floss tube number, I don't know, it'd be like one of the first 6. And it's on black Lugana, 25 count Lugana, and it's filled with, there's quarter stitches and it's filled with krennic, and there's a few beads and there's ribbons and stuff, and I still have it. It's the first and only for a long time piece that I framed for myself. So I FFO'd it relatively soon after I stitched it, and I have it hanging in my craft room, and I still love it. It's triple matted, so it would have cost a fortune. I finished with this colour, I can put it away. And I was, just working, I think, when I got it framed on $8 an hour, so can appreciate, I really loved it. Yeah, that's the first, so that's my first and second pieces that I stitched, and that's the first piece that I ever FFO'd for myself. What colour should I do next? The 4. Where is the symbol? Oops. There it is. We'll just do one more colour and then I'll wrap this video up. I think I've got 2 more questions and we'll see how it goes. 600. Oh, I like this colour too. I mean, I love most of the colours. Every colour's great in context. Some colours on their own you might go, ooh, but next to something else it can look amazing. So okay, I've got 3 big squares of 600. Okay. How do you store your cross stitch floss? Oh shoot. You name it, I store it like that. Okay. So depends on what it is. My DMC well really when I say my master set, my DMC, majority of my DMC, I have those plastic floss boxes. I have 5 of them, and I have my DMC on, recently I put them onto plastic bobbins with some cool little stickers with all the colour symbols on them, the numbers and the colours. So they're in those boxes. I have an overflow of DMC where maybe I bought too much for a project or where people have destashed and given me. So I had a whole lot from my friend who used to stitch, a whole lot from Gail. I've bought, as I said, bought too much for some projects. So my overflow of DMC is in a plastic box, like a click-clack kind of box, Sistema box. And I keep a spreadsheet in Excel of all of the colours that are in there and how many skeins there are. So when I need to kit something up or if I run low on a floss, I check that spreadsheet before adding it to a shopping list. There are some colours in there I'll probably never use because I've got like 5 skeins of a really weird green colour that I'm unlikely to stitch a lot of, but that's okay, that's where that is. All of my over-dyed flosses and silks I keep on floss drops, on rings, and they're hanging from a couple of 3M hooks in my craft room. I do have plans to change how they are hung. Maybe by next week I'll be able to show that, because I finally bought some hardware to hang some metal notice boards up that I'm going to hang the floss from in colour families from little S-hooks. I just have to get the S-hooks now. I wanted black S-hooks, but they didn't have any little ones at Mitre 10 or Bunnings when I went yesterday. Then I've got some random assortments of floss with special needs, special purposes, that I keep either in another Systema box. So I've got some hanks of silk that I don't want to break down yet, that mostly Silks for You, that are in those, they're in another Systema big box. I've got some other little, my Overa Soie d'Alger I keep in a biscuit tin. I've got a handful of 103 and Gutermann silks on spools that I keep in a little floss box. So mostly, overdyed. So, Victorian Motto, Tom and Lily, Gentle Arts, etc., Thread Gather, they all hang from floss drops on together, in colour families, or if they're highly variegated, they're on a ring together. And the Silks for You and some other bits, a few other random silks I've got as well, such as Almond M&Ms, some Silk Mori, some other random silks. What do you call it? What's that silk called? Water lily, Karen water lilies. They all hang on a ring. So it's mostly how I keep them. They kind of need to be accessible. I need to see them. I have a few things in some tins that I forget I have, and so the tins I tend to keep when I've got projects in mind. So like I make a note that, this particular tin has got silks that are put aside for a particular project, so that I don't need to find them. Like I don't need them to trigger, like when I'm kitting up something, I don't need to know about them because they're already earmarked for a project. But if I'm kitting something up or I want to do my own conversion, I need to be able to grab the bunch of reds or the bunch of pinks or bunch of greens so I can see what I've got. I need to be able to lay them out. A floss toss needs to be an easy thing to do. So I don't want things put away in individual little drawers, because my stash is there to be seen and used, not to be perfect and away. But I have a big craft room, so which I accept will be at times messy. I'm okay with that because it's a creative space. It's not a relaxing space. So there's only one more question left, which was suggest to talk about myself a little bit. So where are we at? We're at 59 minutes. I do want to finish these two little pieces. So again, a lot of you are new. Welcome. Thank you for coming along. I am New Zealand born and bred. I was brought up in the Bay of Plenty in the Whakatane region, and I moved to Wellington in 1999. I transferred down with the Westpac, the bank I was working at the time, and I wanted to move to Wellington because I love the arts. I love live shows, theatre, musicals, dance, and I had visited my best friend a couple of times when she had moved down here, and we'd gone to some shows and all that sort of thing. And where I lived didn't have a lot, in Whakatane doesn't have a lot going on. So when you either had to go all the way to Auckland or, but generally you had to go to Auckland to go to anything other than, 2 or 3 sort of things a year that might happen locally. And Wellington is also quite a small city on a global scale, and it's very accessible and compact, so that you can, come into the city and easily, go somewhere for dinner, then go to walk to a show, then go out for a drink afterwards. It's all very compact, and there's lots of opportunities to get around and to see things. So, and within, a 10-minute diameter, sort of 10-minute radius from where you might park the car, you can get to several theatres. There could be the ballet, could be a musical, there could be some fringe sort of festival thing on, art galleries, museums, we get, all that sort of stuff. So that's why I moved to Wellington. I absolutely love live shows. I love amateur, professional. So I moved down. I have never been married. I don't know that I ever want to get married. I am 50, so possibly will never get married. I've never really wanted to get married. I've never really wanted to have children. I like being independent. I like being able, I love traveling. I enjoy dabbling in photography, although I haven't done any for a little while. I do have a nice DSLR camera, my Nikon D90, and I love it. And I like scrapbooking my travel photos. Again, haven't been anywhere for a while. I have always enjoyed doing things with my hands, so I do other paper crafty stuff. So I do my scrapbooking, which is memory keeping, fancy albums. I think I have 5, 10, 15, 20, 40. I probably have about 45 scrapbook albums, which is amazing given I don't have any kids, but guess what, I have a life. I'm a cat person, not a dog person. I love reading. Some favourite authors. I love Joanne Harris, Diana Gabaldon, Neil. Sorry, I got distracted. Neil Gaiman, Ursula Le Guin, Tolkien. I did a literature degree, so Shakespeare, Donne, Marlowe. I can't even think now. Jane Austen, the Brontes. I did older stuff. And music. I enjoy a range of music. Like with books, I don't love everything of a particular genre. I like what I like, but I am completely, utterly mad for Tori Amos. I first found her when her second album came out in 1994 is when I first found her, and I now own a multitude of CDs, DVDs, books, autobiographies, biographies, memorabilia, special edition, special release CDs, bootlegs, whatever, just all sorts of stuff. and love her. A huge fan, been to concerts 3 times, I think, and I would have gone more, but we have to travel to another country to go to them. She did come to New Zealand, but I didn't know her then. One time, Auckland in 1992, after Little Earthquakes was released. I have a sister. My sister lives in Brisbane with all her grown-up children and her second husband. Still friends with her first husband. Got 2 stepbrothers. They're all younger than me. One lives in Auckland with his wife and daughter, my niece, and the other lives in Christchurch with his new partner. His ex and daughter live in Japan. They're Japanese. And yeah, I'm still pretty close with his ex-wife, and because we're just the kind of family who get on with people and don't hold grudges and get weird about stuff. So yeah, I'm still close with my sisters-in-law and brother-in-law. And yeah, my mum passed away a number of years ago. She died in 2010 following a long illness with COPD, emphysema and old money. And my dad has had a rough time of it with his heart and stuff of last couple of years, so that's been a challenge. And my stepmother, who Dad met, back in 1983. They've been together since then. She has advanced Alzheimer's and lives in full-time care, and it's quite sad and stuff. So that's kind of the family. That is where we're at with sunset. So today we got all of this little bit done in here. When I picked this up this afternoon, we're at 80.02% or something, and we've just got to 80.82, so almost 1% done in this little stitch with me, needles on fire. Yeah, thanks for coming along on the journey with me. I appreciate you coming along and listening to me gabble on about random crap for an hour and 8 minutes. Yeah, appreciate it, and I will see you next week. As always, don't let your needles rust. Ciao.